Yeah, thanks. I'm going to respond largely to the question of Labour and the Tories. And specifically, I suppose, is about the title of tonight, which is 55 weeks to save the NHS. Because the fact is, we haven't got 55 weeks to save the NHS. We've got as long to save the NHS as the NHS exists for. And what I mean by that is, Gordon made a point earlier about you can't win an election in Scotland unless you support the NHS. Well, funnily enough, as the Tories found last time here, they couldn't win an election in England until they started putting posters up that said, we're going to cut the deficit, not the NHS. Now, this is a party of Daniel Hannan, who refers to the NHS as a 60-year mistake. But that's a 60-year mistake that's been responsible for the healthcare of every single member of my family and every single friend I've got. So I won't repeat my response to that, because I don't think it's fair for a public meeting like this. In the question of Labour and the Tories, we will need to defend the NHS regardless of who gets elected. There is no doubt about that. But I think that there is a fundamental difference. You know, I've been a union officer for 15 years. The majority of that time was under a Labour government, and God did I moan about them. But what we had under Labour was a very, very modest improvement in workers' rights. What we've had under the Tories is a catastrophic attack on them. What we had in public services was public services being funded. Now, I know a lot of that money went to the wrong places. I know too much of it went on PFI deals. I know too much of it went on privatisation. But the money was there and services improved. I had an auntie who in 1996 needed a hip operation. She got it in 1998. Now, for two years for someone in their 70s waiting for a hip operation, she never got better. Under Labour, we got rid of that. Now, Labour are too much in hot to the banks. You know, just today, Milburn said we need to be nicer to business. Do we, hell? Yeah. The business folk for the other side, they're not who we need to be nice to. We need to be nice to the people suffering the bedroom tax. We need to be nice to the people on waiting list, to the people on 0 hours contracts. Recently there was a quote in the paper with another of these wonderful Labour high flyers, Will Martindale. Labour has nothing to offer affluent voters. Yes, we do. We have a better society which they will pay more for, but they will see the benefits. And that's what we need to say. So we've got to be open about the NHS. Andy Burnham, met him a number of times. He seems like he's got the right idea. I've got no doubt that if he gets into health secretary, he's going to have the same problems with money as everyone else. But at least there's people we agree with. But if Labour do get in, then we're still going to need to fight every privatisation. We're still going to need to fight every closure. We're still going to need to fight every PFI that takes money out and takes public money and turns it into private profit. And how often have we seen a privatisation which means someone at the bottom who was earning £9 an hour go down to £7? And who makes that the difference? We, the taxpayer, who pay the in-work benefits to that person. So we are very clear as a union that we support the Labour Party, but we support them without illusions. We know that we've got to replace the careerists with socialists. We know we've got to get a commitment to funding it properly and to supporting it properly. But at the moment, we've got to be quite clear. This is a two-party system, and we have two choices. One is catastrophic. The other might give us some chance.
Thank you, Dan. I think I better talk about the strike action first. As a union man, as somebody who sits on the National Industrial Sector Committee, we have discussed this within our union as much as all the other unions have as well. I've always been on the belief that we should be going on strike. Not because we've got a 1% pay rise, it's because my brothers and sisters who are in my union are being marginalised. They're getting 1% or nothing. You can't have something like that. It's everybody should be getting a pay rise, everybody should be getting a pay rise in regards to receiving and maintaining a living wage. Now, one of the things about having a ballot for strike action, this can only be an England thing at the moment. It's going to be difficult in Scotland because the PRB award was agreed and it's been given, and also those under 21,000 receive a minimum £300 pay rise. In Wales, they're already voted to go on strike purely on their tax on their terms and conditions. So again, we have to address that, and Northern Ireland haven't made their mind up yet. So there are issues about strike action. I fully believe it should happen. I've been encouraging colleagues from Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland to join us and support us much in the same way we support them. This is a very, very important time. It's not just about 1%. Our pension's been under attack for a very long time now. And again, we've actually been paying more and more towards this. And again, I talked to you a little bit earlier about our our golden pension that we're going to receive. This is not true again. A large, significant number of NHS workers, normally mothers, take a career break, they do not pay all of their pension. So therefore they do not receive all of their pension. And again, they will be affected by this, and they will continue to be affected. They are being attacked. So again, there are issues around that one. I want to also come a little bit back on the Labour Party being just as bad. I mean, the point made by Paul. And again, I do understand that, and again, I think everybody could feel the same way sometimes. But when I first started the NHS, I started in 1996. I worked in a building that had 342 leaks in it. We used to basically date them and list them every time a new leak came through, every time it rained. Now, over a period of time, I'm now working in a multi-million-pound lab. When I first started work, we could do 500 tests. I can now do 25,000 in a day. Now, a significant improvement around this one, so the diagnostic treatment, turnaround time, has improved. It improved under a Labour investment. How they did it, we could argue with until we blew in the face, because we don't always agree with it. PFI was wrong. It was a mistake. Unfortunately, the Tories are doing exactly the same thing. There is more investment in PFI under the Tories. So again, we have to recognise that as well. PFI debt should be cancelled. It should be written off, taken away, it should move on. It's a simple thing. I mean, like it can be done with a banker's bonus, or even just basically tax evasion and avoidance. There's a lot of money out there, we should find ways of taking it. I did like the comment about nationalising the pharmaceutical company as well, and I was thinking, that'd be a lovely way of doing things. Again, they bring prescription charges down. Then you probably saw that programme last night, Panorama, about now GSK, and again their performance. And again, they seem to be able to pay £7.5 billion in debts to the American government for fines on their inappropriate practices, and still make a lot of money. You've got to think, where the bloody hell's all that money going? And again, it's worrying, it's concern. I'll leave it to my other colleagues to make the other comments. Thank you.
I probably have got actually very little to add, but just a quick couple of points. One of the good things about not representing the Labour Party at a meeting like this is I can probably say what I want with the Labour Party, and I'm not actually accountable. I don't think the Labour Party made any mistakes in its last term of office. What they did was make some absolutely cataclysmic errors in the way they ran the government. And the big problem was that the coalition that actually put Blair in office in 1997, because of what he did, when the Labour Party then needed Labour's core voters, people who should have an absolute loyalty to the Labour Party, public service workers and their families, they simply drifted away, and they were not willing to vote Labour. You know, they either went to some fringe parties. In Scotland they went to the SNP, but more often than not, what they did was they simply stayed at home on election day, and they wouldn't come out and vote Labour. So there was some huge errors on behalf of the Labour Party then. But I do have to say, for people who say voting doesn't matter and one is as bad as the other, the last 4 years show absolutely that voting does matter and one is not as bad as the other. And say, no matter how bad things were under Blair and Brown, by God, the worst day under Labour is better than the best day under the Tories in the last 4 years, and we have to put them back out. What we do need to do is to get people back in the Labour Party and remotivate people who are in the Labour Party to try and actually put pressure to get the kind of things that we want. Power is something that really concentrates the mind. And if people like Miliband and Balls think that they need to make some commitments in order to get back into power, now's the time to apply the pressure on them to do that. Just on NHS pay, 13% pay cut in the last 4 years, NHS workers. 13% worse off. You know, people now literally have to go to payday lenders in order to pay the bills. They have to go to food banks to put some food on the table, and they go to their union welfare fund. What they used to go for was maybe for the wee treat for their kids to get a holiday once a year. Now what they go to union welfare funds is to pay the bills. You know, working people are in poverty now. The majority of people in poverty are working for the first time ever in history. And we need to change that. But I have to say, if we go and strike for 1%, Scotland will not come out and strike for 1%. You know. So no matter how much I would want to see some industrial action in Scotland, you know, if we come out in England for actually less than what we've got in Scotland just now, I will not be able to bring it my members in Scotland. We need to commit ourselves to what we actually want, whether it's 4% or 5% or 6%. You know, there is a fear still that some people in England will settle for what the PRB recommended. And if we want a national united strike, that's not the way to go about it.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for their comments. I certainly noticed the difference between the Labour and the Tories, because I didn't have to go out and stop on picket lines and oppose hospitals and services closing and being privatised and stuff under the Labour Party. And I think we've got to recognise that Labour did invest hugely in public services, and particularly the NHS, during its term in government. I think that, you know, if you were to go back and look at why they did what they did, I sensed that for that first term there was always a fear that they weren't going to get a second term. So I think what was looked at were more quick fixes. How do you pull in money quickly? How do you turn this around quickly so we can show in our first term that we've made a huge difference? And I think, you know, I've always opposed PFIs. I think they're a mortgage on a credit card. I was one of the people working in the rail unions that tried to stop the PPP on the London Underground. I think the difference is, you know, that last time I went round, where I would stand on a platform with Alan Johnson as Health Secretary and have a bit of a moan about the PFI. Now I feel like actually we've got, you know, a really serious problem, where actually this is not just about what funding mechanism or financing mechanism we're levering in to fund the NHS. This is about the fundamental breakup of the NHS to the point where we won't be able to put it back together again. I think you are absolutely right to call upon the Labour Party to show that it's got a clear difference and to make a commitment to keeping the NHS in the public sector. You know, what I will say to people though, and to people who don't vote on the doorstep, is if you're not going to vote, if you're not going to participate in this, then you are going to hand the power over to the other people. So if you don't like what they're doing, all you're doing is giving them a greater mandate. And I always say, if you want more people like me to go into the Parliamentary Labour Party, then what you need to do is stay in the party, and then, when I turn around, I can see all of you behind me when I'm coming out with all this stuff. But if you walk away and there's less people like me in the Labour Party, there's more people like the other lot who don't mind privatising something. You know, and I think it's really important to remember that. And you'll have guessed from that statement, I'm not particularly tribal about politics. You know, I got into politics in my 30s, and somebody had to sit and persuade me that actually really ought to be part of the Labour Party because political route is the only route to achieving change. So, you know, I'm normally fairly persuasive about this sort of thing because someone had to sit there and persuade me about it. And politics is the only way to achieve change, but it's also important to say that less bad is not good enough. It's not good enough. And I'm happy to stand up there and say that to Ed Miliband or any shadow cabinet minister. You know, I've done proper jobs on the ground. I haven't just worked in a think tank, as I said earlier. So, you know, let's get them down to see the hospital and the services and meet the workers. I don't mind going into public meetings with lots of angry people and saying where I stand on issues. You know, we did it on climate change, we did it on healthcare during the last election, and I got what were their ministers down to talk to people, because we have got to ask them to explain their policies in front of real people like you that are doing the real jobs on the ground, that are facing these situations where you're basically firefighting every day and you're getting paid less money to do it and you're getting more cuts and having to take on more responsibility. And it is absolutely right. But the only reason that people like me are able to even stand for Parliament is down to the trade union movement as well, because it's an incredibly difficult institution to get into. It is full of a massive network of people that know other people. And, you know, the way that we show our strength is by sticking together, because we all know other people too. And actually, that is now the way we are getting more people like me into Parliament. And if the trade unions' political strategies come off, I'll be very proud to see it. And I'd love to be sitting in a parliamentary Labour Party full of people like you that will sit there and say the kind of things that you've been saying now, and say, actually, the reason we want to have the NHS is because we believe this is about political will. This is about putting the money where we want it to go, not where somebody else tells us to put it, because we will have the power if we are in the majority.